Jon Favreau's Ultra HD 3D Lion King is the newest in a series of Disney remakes of animated classics. The original Lion King came out 24 years ago. It broke box office records, it won Academy Awards, it had catchy music, fun performances, beautiful hand-drawn animations, and a screenplay inspired by Shakespeare's Hamlet and the story of Moses. It still remains #1 in home video sales to this day. Everybody loves Lion King. And now, 24 years later, Disney have almost recreated the original film with computer-generated, hyper-realistic HD animals and environments. With cutting-edge technological advancements, Disney have managed to strip away all the colour, charm, excitement and fun out of The Lion King. They took this.
Why, if it isn't my big brother descending from on high to mingle with the commoners,
And turned it into this.
Well, look who's come down to mingle with the commoners.
They took this.
long live the king.
And turned it into this.
Long live the king!
That's disgusting!
They took away the expression, the human emotion, and just interpreted it in the most literal way they could. They only cut 2 scenes out of the original film. Every other scene has been preserved. Mummified. Pickled. I like pickles. Why would they ruin the very thing they created? Because Disney's highest priority is money, cash, profit. We shouldn't be shocked though. They've practically become a Disney villain themselves, and I mean that's alright. We've known Disney are evil for ages. They ruined Dumbo, they ruined Aladdin, and they ruined Star Wars. Twice. They bought Fox. They own The Simpsons now. Like they bought everything.
Our decision to buy Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm was made because we believed that great storytelling would stand the test of time.
So we know the truth now. Disney have no idea how to make compelling films anymore, but they do know how to make money. Billions and billions of money. Banknotes, hard cash, by opening a portal to our childhoods, bringing us all back to the days when we were innocent, naive children, blissfully unaware of how 9/11 would change our geopolitical landscape forever. And so, just like Bush and Blair used the media to subdue the people into an illegal war with Iraq, Disney too has subdued us into lapping up dull and pandering cinematic trash. Instead of serving anything new, challenging or inventive, we just get the same but worse and slightly boring. A grey gruel with a sprinkle of nostalgia, which for some reason we slurp up indifferently. So in this video, I'm going to be examining this mess, telling you why it's bad and why there's going to be plenty more of it to come. I mean, just look at this year's box office. It's very telling of the current state of the film industry. It's like Lion King except Scar 1. Only 3 films in the top 10 are not Disney, and that's before the Rise of Skywalker gets in here. So move over, Nizar. Disney is taking over. Scar 1. He owns this joint and he wants all his prey. Number 1. Something is rotten in the state of Disney. Remakes aren't a modern invention. We've been going to the cinema to watch them since the beginning. Sometimes they can be pretty inventive. They can recreate that classic charm for a new audience and even improve on the original. Wizard of Oz, Ocean's 11, The Thing, Scarface, Dawn of the Dead and The Fly are some of the better received ones. But mostly, they're just bad imitations that hijack the well-known name and brand for cheap monetary gain. Who really remembers Total Recall, Conan the Barbarian, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Clock Eye or Robocop? Now, live-action remakes of animated Disney films aren't a modern invention either. The first one was all the way back in the 90s. Now, I wouldn't describe the 101 Dalmatians remake as a classic, but it is an adaptation handled with a degree of care. This was a period of time where live-action movies were trying to be like cartoons, and they got none other than Home Alone's John Hughes to pen the script. It's pretty impressive how close they stick to the original story while also having non-speaking animals. The film has style and a sense of playfulness, and there is a satisfaction in seeing Cruella de Vil performed in person.
Well, if we make this coat, it would be as if I were wearing your dog.
A sexual satisfaction. Ugh! Curse you, Sigmund Freud!
What is it, my Fraulein?
Why do I find Cruella de Vil sexy?
Well, my little Fraulein, you see, the long cigarette is a symbol of the subconscious for a penis, you see. And this is your association.
Oh. What about Lobot? The film did well, it even got a sequel. But that same year, Disney had 2 other live-action films that outperformed 101 Dalmatians in the box office, The Rock and Ransom. Yeah, 1996 was a weird year for movies.
Damn it, Commander, one last time. You tell your men to safety their weapons, drop them on the deck.
I cannot give that order!
I am not going to repeat that order!
I will not give that order!
I am not going to repeat that
I will
order!
not give that order!
What the hell is wrong with you, man?
I cannot give that order!
I am not going to repeat that!
So Disney kept on making bad action movies and stopped remaking its animated films for like 20 years. But now, there's loads of them. We've got Aladdin, we've got Dumbo, we've got Beauty and the Beast, the Aristocats with real life, real acting cats, The Little Mermaid coming soon, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, The Jungle Book, Brother Bear, real HD 3D bears rendered in Unity engine. We've got The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mulan, 101 Dalmatians again, a Goofy movie coming soon, Lady and the Tramp is in production, that looks cute, Cinderella, Goofy in live action will haunt you in your nightmares, Lilo and Stitch with Andy Serkis in a mocap suit playing Stitch, Sleeping Beauty, Pinocchio, The Emperor's New Groove in 3D CGI, you won't believe that's not a real llama. So where did all this come from? Whose idea was this? Who's in charge? There wasn't any kind of announcement, they just snuck them out. They exist, whether we like it or not. Well, it started in 2015 with the release of Cinderella. It had a modest budget of 100 million, and the biggest actor attached to the project was Cate Blanchett, who's great, but doesn't have much star power. Kenneth Branagh directed the film, who's best known for his highly theatrical approach to filmmaking. The guy made a 4-hour Hamlet film and cast himself as Hamlet.
Why may not imagination trace the noble dust of Alexander?
What is he, like 12? He doesn't really make films for children, and if you look at Cinderella, that shows. Gone are the over-the-top slapstick and visual styles of 101 Dalmatians, and it's more like watching an episode of Downton Abbey.
Your Highness. If I may, that is...
But much to everyone's surprise, Cinderella made bank at the box office. 540 million. It made more than Spectre, Mission Impossible, and Ant-Man. Cinderella did well because it's a story that is synonymous with our childhoods. It didn't matter if the film was any good, parents were gonna buy tickets to watch it with their children and nothing was gonna stop them. But because the film wasn't particularly marketed to children, it meant adults could go see it on their own to relive their childhoods. This was further cemented by the release of the Jungle Book remake in 2016. This was directed by Jon Favreau. Even though I love the original Jungle Book, I didn't really mind this remake. Favreau tried to make the jungle environment and the animals look as realistic as possible, which is a bad idea for Lion King, but really worked for Jungle Book. The original film is all about the simultaneous seduction and danger of the jungle. In this remake, the animals look a lot more threatening in comparison to their 2D counterparts, especially when you have this little kid actor interacting with these huge, terrifying animals that clearly just want to eat him. Also, it's worth noting that the film is wildly different from the animated version. There's barely any of the original scenes, and when the scenes are adapted, there are massive changes. But most of the film features completely new scenes with a completely different intention behind them. I mean, it's not better than the original, it's still quite boring.
May I say just one thing? What I saw you do today, I've never seen anything like it. I've been trying to get that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam. I just dropped off a bit.
You fell asleep?
Yeah, I did. Sorry about that.
Also, the kid playing Mowgli is terrible at acting.
I was lost and I didn't know what happened. But then I met Baloo, and then he saved me from
What are
a
you,
giant
like
snake.
12? How old are you? But with its star casting, a big name as popular as Jungle Book, and some impressive looking visual effects, it was unsurprising to everyone that the remake was a huge box office hit. It made $1 billion. $1 billion! So what was next for Disney? Well, they probably looked at their catalogue of the 20+ animated movies and looked at the ones that had the highest box office return. And right at the top is, of course, Dumbo, the biggest cash cow of them all. Only joking. I have no idea why they remade this. It's right at the bottom. Maybe as an experiment? Well, it certainly didn't make $1 billion. Not even close.
Look at the sign! Dumbo!
So of course Lion King is actually the one on the top. So naturally they rushed the remake into production. If someone had protested, if they had pointed out that the original film still held up today and there was no real justification or argument to remake it because there was no hope of improving it, the response would have been, but we'll make $1 billion. We'll make $1 billion. $1 billion, Michael. It made sense to get Jon Favreau in to direct Lion King because of his experience making realistic CGI animals while working on Jungle Book. And if he's the man that could rake in $1 billion for Jungle Book, then he could certainly rake in another $1 billion for Lion King.
My name is Chimp!
But the original Jungle Book film was 50 years old when they remade it, and it's based on a novel that's even older. Also, it's not new to see reboots or adaptations of the story. Disney even made a live-action remake of Jungle Book back in the 90s, but I didn't mention it before because it is genuinely the worst version of this story in existence. The problem with Lion King is they took a relatively recent film that still holds up today, that isn't even based off an original piece of text, and heartlessly remade it with CGI. It's the equivalent of remaking Forrest Gump or Pulp Fiction. They also came out in 1994 and there's no demand to see those remade. And if you think Walt Disney wrote in his will that he wanted his classic films to be remade for a new generation, then I'm here to tell you that you're reading fake news. Stay vigilant, stay informed, people. Don't believe them. They're lying. Thank you, thank you. So there's no moral obligation to churn out these films on strict deadlines like they're hotcakes in a bakery. This is a choice. And I think it's the wrong choice, in my opinion. By the way, this is all just my opinion. I'm not like a professor in Lion King. This isn't film school. I'm just a dude. A lot of you comment underneath treating me like I've got some form of validity, but I'm just shouting my opinion out a wall, to be honest. Number 2. Putting it in the machine. In terms of remakes, Lion King 2019 has less in common with the 101 Dalmatians remake or the Jungle Book remake, and more in common with the Psycho remake. Psycho 1998 aimed to be as similar as possible to the original, with the script, editing, dialogue and music virtually remaining the same. There were only very minor changes here and there. It was essentially the same film again, but in colour and with worse performances.
People always mean well. They cluck their thick tongues and shake their heads and suggest oh so very delicately.
People always mean well. They cluck their thick tongues and they shake their heads and they suggest oh so very delicately.
It felt soulless and was roasted by critics and audiences alike. The only saving grace of the Lion King remake is at least Jon Favreau didn't cast Vince Vaughn as Mufasa.
And you know what, big boy? You're grown up! You're grown up! Yeah, dig that!
But the direction behind both these remakes seemed virtually the same. Both directors were enamored with the original film and wanted to preserve their greatness by staying as close as possible to their predecessors.
The original Psycho it exists. It's a fact. It's a classic.
There's nothing to be improved.
There's nothing to be improved on.
With Lion King, as much as the plot, dialogue, shot compositions, themes, music, and structure are kept exactly the same. But considering the cultural significance of this intellectual property, it might have been smart. People don't like change. We've all been studiously rewatching the original Lion King since we were little kiddies. Audiences know every scene and every line of dialogue. If you mess with those moments, the part of the brain that exudes that nostalgia chemical will come to a crashing halt, and everyone will just say, it was bad because they changed stuff. Disney is a business, kids. They just want Lion King done in super realistic CGI animation. Just put it through the machine, Favreau. Put Lion King through the same machine you put Jungle Book through. Don't adapt your story for this new creative direction, Favreau. Just put it through the machine. And put Bug's Life through the machine as well. We already have the script and all the characters. The film's basically done for us already. We want super realistic CGI ants. And get that cheeky James Corden as that fat slug. And Tom Hardy as the main ant guy. Put it through the machine, Favreau. Put it through. But how successfully did Jon Favreau recreate the original classic? Was copying the scenes shot for shot enough to recreate feeling and artistic intention behind those scenes? Well, let's look at the opening scene on Pride Rock and vigorously compare every small detail between the two versions, with the hope of deriving some form of meaning from this empty husk of a film. Let's start with the original animated film first. Alright, I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and pretend you've never seen Lion King before. Okay, so there's blackness, stillness, nothing. and then the sun explodes into the frame. It's huge and right in the center. That's how you know it's important. We see various animals quickly look up towards the sun. Then the scale increases as we see more and more animals get up and move in the direction of the sun. We see an adult and baby giraffe walk with pace up a hill and into the light of the sun. As we follow this baby giraffe, we follow its eye line to a huge herd of animals moving towards the sunlight. It moves through the vast crowd of animals and tracks Zazu as he flies towards Pride Rock. So why are all these animals acting like the three wise men? Well, it's all there in the opening shot. The song playing behind this sequence is The Circle of Life, and the imagery of the sun is used to represent that cycle. The sun is responsible for all life on Earth. It is a glowing circle of light that nurtures creatures with warmth and allows the plants to grow. This makes more sense later on when we hear Mufasa describe his kingdom to Simba.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun. One day, Simba, the sun will set on my time here and will rise with you as the new king.
The animals walk from left to right in the direction of the sun with purpose. It's an unnatural event and it feels like it has a religious significance, as if they've all been summoned. Out of this huge crowd of animals, a single bird flies towards Pride Rock and towards Mufasa. We've been following these animals since the start, but when Zazu stops next to Mufasa, that sequence ends, and we, the audience, understand that this is what the animals have all been heading towards. But I know what you're thinking. Everything I'm praising the original Lion King for doing is exactly the same in the remake. The opening sequence is shot for shot identical in the remake, so therefore there's nothing to complain about. Is there? Is there, Jerry? Is there, Peter? Is there? But let's go back to that opening shot. Do you notice anything peculiar about this shot? Does anything about it stand out to you? Well, I'll tell you what makes it special later. But staying on track with the comparison, essentially the main difference between these two versions is that the sun is not given the same significance. The landscape is clearly visible before the sun has even risen, and when it does rise, it's much smaller and shoved onto the left-hand side. There isn't that all-important explosion of light. We then essentially get a shot-for-shot reconstruction of the original, but with less stylistic lighting effects, which, as I've just said, is one of the most important factors in the spiritual aspect of this sequence. We don't feel that the animals are reacting to the sun, more that they're just waking up. Let's look at the classic giraffes again. Look at those dreamy eyes, luscious lips. In the original, the two giraffes walk over a hill with determination and purpose. The shadows creep off their face as the light hits them. They gaze upon the congregation of animals and gleefully join them. In the remake, they meekly hobble up the mound. And you call that the light of God? The Three Kings didn't hobble! We see that herd of animals far away in the distance, but without the baby giraffe's eyeline, you might miss it. Then we get the reveal of Pride Rock, this time without following Zazu. We just cut to Zazu and I think he bows, or that might just be a bird looking for nuts. It's either or really, but it doesn't really matter because Mufasa doesn't seem to notice him. He's just staring out, indifferently, vacantly, vacuous and empty, unaware of his surroundings. In the original, Zazu doesn't just bow, he grovels. And he's happy to do so as well, because Mufasa actually looks like a nice guy. He acknowledges Zazu with warmth and humility, returning with a friendly little head bow. This makes it clear straight up the kind of king Mufasa is. He recognizes every living creature with respect, and in return they admire and respect him. He's not a king of indifference. He doesn't look like a pre-installed screensaver on an old Mac. Staying on the original, we then cut to this mandrill walking through the crowds of animals. He's holding a staff and there's a beam of light behind him. This implies that he has some kind of spiritual significance. It is also clear that he is a character of high status because the other animals bow. He climbs up the rock and affectionately hugs Mufasa. It is blatant that these two are old friends and this is a joyous occasion. Meanwhile, on planet Favreau, Rafiki is introduced and it's not as good, is it? There's no staff, no beam of light behind him, and the other animals don't bow. They just kind of look at him. When Rafiki gets up to Pride Rock, he doesn't hug Mufasa warmly, instead he just touches his nose. So maybe this is the first time they've met? I mean, if you haven't seen Lion King before, you can interpret it in lots of different ways. It's a broader gesture. Unless you know a lot about mandrills and know this specific gesture is a sign of affection and trust among other mandrills. But I'm not a mandrill man. How am I supposed to know any of this? Okay, let's go back to the animated version. Rafiki waves his monkey stick around Simba, which showcases that he's a playful, caring mandrill, if they exist. He holds this circular fruit up over the circular sun and breaks it. It's the circle of life. He puts the juice across Simba's head like some kind of baptism. He then picks up some sand from the ground and sprinkles it on Simba's head. The more steps that we are shown in this ritual, the more important it seems to us. Rituals are all about small, over-theatrical actions. That's what makes them good. We know this one's about the dirt and the sun and nature, and we know this cub is connected to all of that. But with 3D, HD, 4K, hyper-realistic, Panasonic, Panavision coming to a cinema near you, Lion King, all the ritual is gone. Rafiki doesn't use his monkey stick to play with Simba because he hasn't got a monkey stick. So he just looks at him with indiscernible predator eyes. Instead of fruit juice, something that needs the sun to grow, he uses a root, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is a plant more associated with the underground and sort of, death and burial. In fact, if it wasn't for the joyous music, this would look more like a sacrificial baby death ritual. See, that's more midsummer than the circle of life. In the animated version, Rafiki picks up Simba and heads towards the end of Pride Rock. We see the animals look up in anticipation. As Rafiki lifts up Simba, the camera zooms in and we get several fast-paced cuts as the music builds. When he's raised, all the animals go nuts. From the clouds, a beam of light bursts out the sky and spotlights Simba, and all the animals bow as low as they can. We zoom out to an extreme wide shot which reveals the entire set piece and the Lion King. The original film has a great opening sequence. It tells us so much about the world, the characters and the themes without even using a single line of dialogue. The film's called The Lion King, but it's only after watching this sequence that you really understand what that means. That's the Lion King. That line up there. The animals are all fans of the king. He is deeply linked with spirituality and the circle of life. We feel the pride and love of Simba's parents. It's like watching a huge festival, and when Rafiki holds Simba up to the crowd, it's like he's firing a gun. In the remake, Rafiki presents Simba to the crowds, but there isn't that use of fast-paced movement and editing that builds up the moment, so it just feels whelming. We get a pan around, the animals are excited, but the emotion is hard to read. Rafiki raises Simba to the roaring crowds with the same level of enthusiasm he'd used to present Simba if he was a miscarriage. Then I think we see some animals bow, some horns going down at the least, and then Lion King. Ugh. So yeah, the two scenes are virtually the same aside from some small differences. But those small differences are the key to understanding the fundamental problems of this film. In this whole opening sequence, there is nothing that Favreau has added in himself. It's the same, but it's missing small essential pieces required to read the scene. In other words, it's the same but worse. One of the most crucial things about Lion King is the grandiosity of the storytelling. Remember, this is an animated film with talking animals, like Bambi, 101 Dalmatians or the Aristocats. Yet Lion King opens like something from the Old Testament, a grand opera that takes itself incredibly seriously. The directors are immediately telling us that this is a film that will thematically focus on the delicate balance of life, responsibility, and what it means to be king. In the remake, this opening scene is harder to read. The spiritual themes and symbolism have been stripped down. The relationships between the animals have been minimized, and as a result, we do not connect with the story in the same way. Do we really understand Rafiki's role in this scene without his facial expressions, without his staff, the beam of sunlight, or the bowing animals? Is touching Mufasa's face as powerful as this warm embrace? Is this spotlight on Simba really that important? Yes. All this stuff is important. That's why it's in the film. Every tiny decision is a key ingredient for defining the scope that's required to make this hero story feel distinct. Lion King isn't Bambi. It's Lawrence of Arabia. It's not Ice Age. It's Star Wars. This isn't Paddington 2, it's Hamlet. The stories which Lion King are most connected to require a strong visual link with the themes, and a scale that fits the depth and timelessness of them. So why did Favreau change it? The answer is back at the opening shot. The thing that's different about this shot is that this was filmed on a real camera in real Africa. It's the only shot in the whole remake that hasn't been computer animated. Favreau wanted to sneak it in at the start, I guess as a way of gloating.
I mean, literally every shot was animated.
Except one.
One, that's right.
Are you going to tell me which one?
There's one shot that was photographed, but everything else was generated.
What's the one shot?
I got to let people see the movie.
I was trying to figure it out last night.
Did you? Do you get? What's your guess?
One person in my office said they think it was just the opening shot.
Okay.
He's basically saying that the computer-generated images are so realistic, so convincing, that he can put in real footage and you won't even notice.
How cool is it that you have to work so hard to figure it out?
To Favreau, that is the most important thing, how realistic his Lion King looks. What the sun represents in the circle of life sequence isn't what matters, it's the realism of the animals. Rafiki being introduced as a wise, whimsical priest who is close friends with the king is nice and all, but there's no way he's going to be holding a staff or hugging a lion. That's unrealistic! You see, Rafiki couldn't break open a piece of fruit in the remake because there aren't any fruit like that in real life. So yeah, just give him that root thing. I'm sure that'll be fine.
Up here on the forehead, there used to be like a fruit juice creating a little mark on his head. But in nature, that actual fruit is not filled with red paint, and we chose to have pigment that comes from roots, and that's how we have that little splash of color there.
So now we're watching Lion King, but virtually every small detail has been reinterpreted in a more realistic, less stylistic way. And that's the main problem. Favreau was solving the wrong problems and not seeing the real problems. If Favreau had solved the right problems instead of the wrong problems, then this film might have worked. No problem. Filmmaking is all about problem solving. When making Jaws, the robotic shark they were using didn't work very well. That was Spielberg's problem. He solved it by hardly ever showing it. Problem solved. What a great problem solver. When making the original Star Wars, George Lucas realized that after rescuing Princess Leia, there wasn't really much for Obi-Wan to do. He just stood around on the ship doing nothing. So while shooting the movie, Lucas realized that he could kill both his problems and Obi-Wan on the Death Star. But now he's got a new problem. What was he gonna do with all those scenes with Obi-Wan and Luke talking? Make him a ghost. Ka-ching. With filmmaking, there are so many problems firing at you all the time. And if you ignore one of them or let one slip, you might ruin a perfectly good scene or even the whole movie. So what were the key problems Favreau had to overcome when adapting this opening sequence? Well, in Favreau's eyes, the problems were, how do I make this hug more realistic? Or how do I replace this fruit with something more realistic? But his real problems with this scene were, how do I make this moment feel spiritual and large in scope? How do I introduce Rafiki as the old wise sage who's going to lead this ritual? How do I introduce the key themes of this film? How do I do all this whilst maintaining a degree of realism? Because Favreau truly believed that by just copying the original film shot for shot, he wouldn't have to worry about any of these problems. And maybe he didn't, because the audience watching this remake already know this sequence. They already know who Rafiki, Mufasa and Simba are. They already know from the music alone what this scene represents. We all have that original sequence hardwired into our brains. Any gaps in information that are missing in this remake can be filled with memories from the original. So we're paying money to go to the cinema and remember a better film. And this made how much? 1.6 billion! It's what? The new highest grossing animated film of all time! This! Favreau, what were you even thinking? Favreau? Oh, he's in VR again.
Number 3. Favreau doesn't want to direct. He just wants to play video games.
Just like the rest of the population, it seems the director of this movie craves virtual escapism as well. Favreau! Get out of that VR world and make your movie. But perhaps Lion King 2019 wasn't meant to be a film at all. It could have been intended to be a video game. I mean, it was the first film to be made with Unity Game Engine, the same software that brought you such classic games as Slender Man. A hyper-realistic video game where you could play as a lion, on paper would have been pretty cool, because video games were all about role-playing, fun gameplay loops and sexy graphics. But video games aren't really well known for their storytelling capabilities.
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
So if Lion King 2019 was a video game, I wouldn't have a problem with how it looks. But it's not a video game. It's a retelling of Hamlet with singing lions. What part of that story would be made better through grounding it in realism? In most CGI films, you've got a highly stylistic, expressive visual style. You don't really see Pixar, DreamWorks, Sony Animation or Illumination making super realistic films with CGI people. With animation, you have different tools available to you, and going down the realism path usually gets you into uncanny valley territory. But CGI and live action films are a completely different story. The aim with them is to make it blend in with real footage as much as possible. It's like a magic trick. If we believe it's real, then it's successful. If we can see it's CGI, then it fails. This is how the CGI in Terminator 2 still holds up today, but the CGI in Deep Blue Sea is nauseating. But the way audiences react to CGI can change over time, like in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I don't remember anyone complaining about this CGI troll at the time. When I was a kid, I believed the troll was physically there, but now it looks objectively bad. This film is objectively bad now. This type of CGI works because we have physical actors who are reacting and interacting with these CGI composites. We have a real location to place the models in. But Lion King 2019 is a CGI film unlike any other. It's using the type of CGI rendering that you would usually find in a live action film, but there's no people around to ground it. There are no natural environments, and the result is the feeling of watching a video game cutscene for 2 hours. As you've probably gathered from my previous slide, facial expressions are pretty important in terms of reading how characters feel. The way I see it, the lions in Lion King 2019 are bad actors. They all remind me of Ben Affleck's acting in Justice League, just staring vacantly off in the distance, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. They're probably thinking about how they're going to spend their massive paychecks on big stockpiles of meat, large scratching posts, and of course, booze! Anything to forget Justice League. Favreau's team cycled through hundreds and hundreds of video clips of animals and put those clips into different categories. This is a happy lion, this is a sad lion, and this is a lion plotting to murder its wife. You can tell by the eyes. If they actually went to the effort of going out and getting their own footage of lions, so it could be used to inform the CGI of the film, then I'd probably be a bit impressed. But it seems like they've just lifted all this footage online.
I know when they made Bambi, Walt would bring in animals for the animators to sketch. But now, thanks to the internet, you have libraries and libraries of footage of animals, so you have all the reference you could ever want. For example, if we wanted a bowing giraffe, it would start with pencil drawings to indicate what the action should be, and then we would go through the library of reference video, and then we would include thumbnails of ones that seem like it might work within this, and the animators would then hand animate the characters that we've designed to be as photoreal as possible.
They stuck this disparate animal footage into their movie as a way of attempting to match the original emotion of the scenes. So of course it looks realistic, but does it look good? Visually pleasing? No, not really. It's like listening to a Lion King audiobook with HD, 3D, 4K footage of animals that vaguely match the dialogue that is being said. It's not like they didn't have the option of animating the faces themselves or changing the biology slightly to make the animals more emotive. They chose to do this. They could have even put the actors in mocap like they did in Andy Serkis's Jungle Book, which Jon Favreau wishes he could match. Christian Bale Puma! Ow! That looks shit. They compensate for this lack of facial expression by making the dialogue more surface level and obvious.
Simba, if you don't do something soon, everyone will starve.
I can't go back.
Why?
You wouldn't understand.
What wouldn't I understand?
No. It doesn't matter. Hakuna Matata.
What?
Hakuna Matata. It's something I learned out here.
You need to challenge Scar.
I can't go back. Ever.
Why? Because of what happened at the gorge? Scar told us that.
You wouldn't understand. None of it matters, okay? Hakuna Matata.
What?
It's something I learned out here, okay?
All the characters have to wear their feelings on their sleeve now. Duplicity and internal struggle can't be pulled off with realistic animal animations.
You knew my father?
Correction. I know your father.
I hate to tell you this, but he died a long time ago.
Nope. Wrong again.
You knew my father?
Correction? I know your father.
He died a long time ago.
He's alive. And I can take you to him.
Scar is no longer the charmingly cunning and manipulative uncle to Simba. That would require Scar to have charisma, to be able to deliver jokes and give a varied facial performance. Because how can deceptive character traits be illustrated to us when you can't even animate a smile to hide behind?
An elephant graveyard is no place for a young prince. Oops.
An elephant what? Whoa.
Oh dear, I've said too much. Well, I suppose you'd have found out sooner or later. You being so clever and all.
An elephant graveyard is no place for a young prince.
An elephant graveyard? Whoa.
Oh, dear, I've said too much. Well, I suppose you'd have found out sooner or later, you being king and all.
So Scar is just very blatantly bitter, dismissive, and evil to everyone around him. He doesn't show any degree of affection or happiness anymore. He's just a miserable, sulking lion, muttering weird, sarcastic insults.
It's our little secret. Your Majesty.
Dad will be so proud, won't he?
It's a gift he'll never forget.
This in turn makes characters like Simba and Mufasa seem dumber, as they keep falling hook, line and sinker for Scar's plans, even when it's clear that Scar has sinister intentions and is unlikable and unforgivable from the very start. In the remake, it is Simba's fault that Mufasa dies. Like, your uncle is so obviously a shady dude. To follow along with anything that he suggests isn't very far from being complicit in the consequences. Kinda like me watching this movie. I've got no one to blame but myself. I'm complicit in my own pain. Ironically, despite Jon Favreau's clear intention to interpret every scene in exactly the same way but sort of gutting them emotionally, he actually adds a couple of scenes. One of the 3 scenes he adds shows Nala escaping Pride Rock. At least I think it's Nala. Her and Sarabi look very similar. But luckily Favreau thought about this and has a solution to the problem.
Nala.
Yeah, just get Sarabi to say Nala's name right at the end of the scene so we know who we've just seen. Genius! I think this scene was put in to empower Nala, but what does the script actually do with her character? Well, they've changed her character from a tomboy-esque sarcastic lion cub,
Hey genius, it was my idea.
and turned her into Naggy Nala.
We've never been that far before. What if we get
A
lost?
version of Nala, but without any of the adventurous risk-taking, and the tendency to constantly demand things off Simba.
Simba, get down, it could be dangerous.
When classic Nala goes to the elephant graveyard, she's all excited. Even the idea of getting caught gives her a thrill.
Isn't it great? We could get in big trouble. I know.
But when Naggy Nala gets to the elephant graveyard, all she can do is nag Simba about how worried she is they'll get caught.
Simba, we're way beyond the Pride Lands.
We found it, Nala. You know what this means?
It means we can go home.
In the original, Simba distracts the hyenas from eating Zazu.
Why don't you pick on somebody your own size?
And then he goes back to save Nala. At the end, Nala says this.
I thought you were very brave.
In the remake, Simba doesn't do anything like that. He just runs away. But they still keep Nala's line for some reason.
I thought you were very brave.
But you warned him this would happen, Naggy Nala. Why are you now acting like classic Nala? When classic Nala sees Simba for the first time in years, she's so excited to see him she can barely organize her thoughts.
Wow! Where did you come from?
This is cool. It's great to see you.
When Naggy Nala sees Simba, her best friend, for the first time in years, all she can fixate on is the bloody pride.
Nala, you're gonna love it here. This place is amazing. It's everything you could ever want.
Simba, we need to leave. Scar has taken over with the hyenas. You have to take your place as king.
These changes make it harder to connect and relate to her character. How should we feel like it's the right thing for Simba to take his place as king, when his best friend sees him in such a dutiful and inconsiderate way? Like seriously, think about it. What would you do if I was your cute guy friend? Like everyone says we are basically made for each other. And me and you have been friends for ages. And just before things can really kick off between us, my dad dies. And my uncle tells you that I also died. You're alone for so many years and the UK becomes ravaged by war. Everyone is looking weak and gaunt and the land is desolate. I'm just a distant memory at this point, and years after all of that, you run into me. And I'm like this really hot stoner hippie with this cute sensitive side, and I am so happy to see you. And I'm staring at you with my dopey sensitive eyes. Would you be more like this?
I've really missed you.
I've missed you too.
or more like this.
Simba, we need to leave.
James L. Jones is back, by the way. It's been 24 years since he last did Mufasa, and it shows.
Don't be afraid. Come to me, son. Come to me.
Not in major ways, but the lines feel retrodden, done, and plain.
Simba, I'm very disappointed in you.
I know.
You could have been killed. You deliberately disobeyed me. And what's worse, you put Nala in danger. You deliberately disobeyed me.
I know.
You could have been killed. And what's worse, you put Nala in danger.
Less energy is given to it all because the guy is 73 years old now.
Come to me!
And to make things worse, his character now looks like a shy football. So he really could have used Jones in top form to try and help this all come together. But alas, we now have an old Jones and a crusty Mufasa. And because Jones's direction was probably to just do what you did in Lion King, but now imagine it realistic. Sadly, the end result is a character that's broadly passable. The film isn't completely devoid of value. I don't want everyone to get the idea that I'm completely empty and without joy. I like Timon and Pumbaa. I feel they work quite well, mostly because Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner have a really good rapport with one another. Their characters deviate the most from their original counterparts, and observing the changes gives the brain something to do.
Uh-oh. Hey, Timon! You better come look! I think it's still alive!
Eee. Oh no, it's a little lion!
That is not a lion.
Well then go check it out, what is it?
That is not a lion, it's a furry bird!
It looks like a lion!
The jokes they crack and general relationship has now taken on a much more homoerotic, neurotic and existential path. There's ad-libs which sometimes actually land, much less has been removed and more has been added. They even add in a whole additional scene where they eat bugs. Again, this line's kind of fun though.
Oh, yeah, the circle of life. I know that.
No. I don't know where you're getting circle.
No, yeah, there's no circle of life.
It's no circle.
No, not at all.
In fact, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's a line.
It's better than making them naggy or boring, which is what I despise most! This in a large part is because Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner are quite distinctive, unique comedy writers who ended up coming with a lot of the dialogue themselves. I guess they just looked at the script and went, nah, we can do better. And so they rewrote everything. Every scene they were in. So the reinterpretation of Timon and Pumbaa can't really be credited to Jon Favreau. So what were Favreau's big ideas? Jon Favreau had in fact one big idea. A le grand legume, as the French say, for adapting Lion King. And that was making it feel like a documentary.
But for me, that was my take. It was like, let's try to make this look like an Attenborough documentary. Let's try to, I don't think people want something that appears to be an animated film because the original animated film from the 90s still holds up incredibly well.
Nature movies, you're used to seeing it from a distance, but reading so much emotion to it. You don't see a close-up of a baby elephant going up to the other elephant. You know, you see it from a distance always, and yet it's heartbreaking. So how could we plug into that?
Favreau would go to great technical lengths to achieve this vision. The animators constructed a virtual African landscape. This was all one large game map. You could walk from Pride Rock all the way to the Shadowlands. You could explore it all freely with a controller. Sort of like Slenderman. You got the woods, little car, cabin. Then they dropped the character models in, with the dialogue recording synced up to the rough animations. Favreau hired cinematographers and made them all wear VR headsets, and they shot the scenes with virtual cameras. This was complete with virtual dollies, virtual lenses, and a virtual hentai waifu who would give them titty jobs on the go.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I like this. This is great. And even if you go up high and look down at them there, it's kind of cool.
A lot of the film is shot with long takes from down low in the grass, and he's added some non-dialogue sequences that were modelled from real documentaries he'd seen. Favreau even played with using different frame rates. This was all to better stimulate the conditions of shooting a real-life documentary film.
And much like a documentary, we chose to make it appear long lens, because with documentaries, often you can't get close enough to the subject. And so as you see, here's the subject in the foreground, and the background is all blurry.
But all this work and effort seems to have been completely in vain, as the 1996 101 Dalmatians remake is more effective as a documentary than the Lion King remake. Purely because the animals don't talk or sing or dance around, they don't plot to kill their brother or speak to their dead father, they act like dogs because they are real life dogs. They achieve a better sense of realism than Favreau's Lion King, and they weren't even trying, because this is the 90s, a weird period of cinema where live action action films were for some reason trying to be cartoons. But it still feels more grounded. We believe we are watching something real and we can grasp it. Favreau doesn't even fully commit to making this film feel like a documentary. He's still recreating the important Lion King sequences shot for shot and having the animals perform Shakespearean dialogue. He still includes all the songs and the comedic relief. The original Lion King knew exactly what it was, a grand animated story for all ages. Whereas the remake has this weird duality to it, where half of it is trying to be an animated cartoon and the other half is trying to be David Attenborough. Because it lacks consistency, it fails to do either and becomes a bland mix of the two, being too realistic to work as a fun animated film for children, but too surreal to believe we're watching something that exists in our world. Favreau wants every shot to feel like it was filmed with an actual person behind the camera, as opposed to the usual sleek, computerized camera movements you often see in other CGI movies. This is because he thinks computerized camera movement will break the immersion, but what he fails to understand is that virtually every scene in the film breaks audience immersion just on its content alone.
Come to me, son! Jump!
It's so unnatural to see animals interacting and expressing themselves in this way. As I've been known to say, making films is like performing magic. You want to trick your audience into believing what you're presenting them. No one has been fooled into thinking they are watching real life lions in real Africa. It's not even like they take the original film and interpret it as a documentary. They do the scenes virtually the same as the original and then add in documentary sequences whenever they can fit them in. In the original film, we see this mouse for a couple of seconds and then splat, it just got crushed. In the remake, we see this mouse move around and just be a mouse for like a minute. Yeah, it does look like a nature documentary, but I want to ask how important this mouse is in the story of Lion King. How does giving this mouse more screen time move the story forward? It doesn't. It's just an opportunity for Favreau to do a little animal sequence, which makes him feel like he's adding something as a director. Oh, Favreau, this mouse sequence is really neat, really great. You made this, wow. I'm gonna put it up on the fridge so everyone can see it. Now go on. Go back to remaking a timeless classic, then you might be allowed to direct that Star Wars show you want. What's that? Is that a new t-shirt? Genie and the Boy? NitPix merch? Did you get that from www.nitpix.co.uk? Have you seen Chef? Lion King 2019 was the first film made on Unity. They literally have a 360-degree open space. They can shoot this in any way they like. Anything is possible. There are absolutely no creative limitations. But the first thing Favreau does is put creative limitations on himself, doing everything in his power to make the film as conventional as he can. It's mad to me that the shots from the original 1994 film are more varied, like this scene where Simba meets Timon and Pumbaa for the first time. In the animated version, we have an extreme close-up on Pumbaa, which shows his intrusiveness and boorishness. In the remake, it's shot like most of the rest of the film. Two-shot, reaction shot, handheld camera that tracks the movements of the animals. We do get some virtual GoPro shots, but that just makes me feel virtually sick than actually sick. The animations they're basing these camera decisions on aren't fully rendered or in any way finished. They don't have the final lighting or the details of their fur or faces. They're just rough shapes. Also, it's not like Favreau can direct these rough animations to change their performance for the sake of the camera. So it's not like shooting a real life film, no matter how many virtual drones and dollies they put in there. This is especially disheartening when real-life nature documentaries clearly have more visually stimulating environments and animal sequences. When I cut from the Lion King remake to real footage, there's a clear difference. So it looks like Favreau failed to capture the very thing he was going for, apart from mandrill documentaries. I'm glad Favreau didn't base his version of Rafiki on realism. Those things look like deadly evil monsters that would tear off your face in a heartbeat.
Number 4. Rafiki should have been a chimp.
Right, so this slide is just a little detour, some micro vent spleening, because Rafiki should have been a chimpanzee in the remake. Okay, hear me out. Rafiki in the original Lion King is like a goofy, wise, old, chirpy mandrill, which is fine for the original Lion King, but mandrills in real life are terrifying predator apes with big teeth and aggressive arses. Chimps, on the other hand, are a much funnier, expressive ape race. Look at these pictures next to each other. Which monkey do you think looks more like a wise, goofy sage? Comment yes if you think it's the old chimp, and comment I'm a fool if you think this terrifying death ape is in any way more charming or funny than the humble chimp. I'm just pointing this out to you. to call Favreau out for not having the balls to take any risks, and instead giving us a garbage juice Rafiki that should have been a chimp. That's it really. That's the slide.
Number 5. If music be the food of Favreau, then I'm full up, thank.
But at the end of the day, we're plebs, lunatics, loose-witted apes with overactive tongues. And so, you give banana, me give eat banana, me eat banana, give me eat banana, give me you. All us Homo sapiens want to see in this audio-visual simulation of Lion King are the damn songs, the tunes, the vibe. That's all we want. We want to bop our heads to those classic songs we already know that we like. I think even I probably wouldn't have spent 2 weeks watching and rewatching Lion King and writing this script if I felt at the very least the songs had been done with honour. The musical sequences in the original film were by far the most cartoony and surreal. It's when they really experimented with different art styles, with choreography and making the environments pop. This is where the photorealistic CGI becomes one of the biggest detractors to the very genre of this film. Because according to Jon Favreau, when animals express their emotions through song, in a fictional musical made by Disney, they just do exactly the same as what they do in real life. Walking. Walking in arbitrary directions. Stopping. Lying down. Or running. Then walking again. In the original version of I Just Can't Wait to Be King, Simba and Nala are walking away from Zazu, yes, but they do more than just walk. They interact with things. Each set piece has its own joke or way of directly incorporating the other animals into the action. The artist who worked on the sequence drew influence from African patterns. This highly colourful, blocky design visually shows Simba's childlike and simplistic view of the world. It characterises his naivety and adds to the sense of chaos in the scene, as we see the animals stand on top of each other like they're in a circus. In the 2019 version, all we have is Simba running around a lake with other animals. They look at the lion cubs with their dead eyes, but all this sequence is telling us about the characters is that they're trying to get away from Zazu, which we already knew. This is the same with the other music sequences. We no longer get the Nazi-esque marching of the hyenas in Be Prepared, or the vivid lighting effects in Can You Feel the Love. It's just animals in photorealistic terrains running through biomes like they're in a Minecraft playthrough.
This is nice up here too. I don't know what this is for, but come up here guys, see where I am?
The cold truth is that real life, photorealistic, 3D, Ultra HD, 4K Panasonic, Panavision, Unity powered animals should not sing. Not in something that's aiming to be a nature documentary anyway. It looks weird. At least I think it does. What do you think? Comment yes if you agree with me. Be Prepared has had all of its bombastic, punchy performances sucked out of it. Now it's supplemented by a brooding narration from Chiwetel Ejiofor, who despite being a good performer, doesn't take the segment beyond being one-note exposition really. He sings the words "Be Prepared" twice, and then they call it a day, kick up their feet, and begin dunking their digestives. Where's the marching? Where's the sound of gas exploding out the ground in order to make the rhythm? No mate, it's all gone now. It's just talking this dialogue at us, and it's half the length. And hardly any of us complained?
It's like a slam poetry version of a good song. It's like watching an emo middle schooler try to work out the lyrics to his favorite MCR song after his mom said he couldn't go to the concert.
Hakuna Matata is made less powerful by the fact that Timon and Pumbaa keep ad-libbing in between the musical segments about arbitrary and stupid things. Billy Eichner is a good singer and makes it work, but poor Seth Rogen can't carry his voice.
Ain't no passing craze. It ain't no passing craze.
Musical? More like music call me later, Seth Rogen, because you can't sing.
Hakuna Matata. It ain't no passing craze.
I don't mean to be unkind, but you have one of the worst singing voices possibly in Miami.
What once was
When I was a young warthog.
Now becomes
When I was a young warthog.
See, it's got less punch, less panache, less cream in the cannoli. One of the most memorable moments in the entire franchise is Hakuna Matata, and again its strength is sucked out of it like a vampire victim. Donald Glover does save it right at the end slightly, because old Childish Gambino does got them pipes. I mean, come on, we know he's got them pipes, but it's only briefly at the end. And sadly, this is the only instance in which I think Donald Glover's singing skills are showcased effectively in the Lion King remake. Because despite Beyonce and Donald Glover both being incredibly talented singers in their own right, once we get to Feel the Love Tonight, I don't feel the love tonight. I feel mild warmth, like the beginning of a crush. Tonight. Their voices have not mixed together in a satisfying way, and the overly breathy performance from both artists detracts from the crisp, simple melody, which was present in the original. The song doesn't sound awful by any means. It's not as disheartening as how they treated Scar's solo. However, this is Beyonce and Donald Glover. This song should have felt like the most transformed and impactful song in the entire film. But instead it's just Beyonce and Donald Glover doing Lion King karaoke, not bringing their own unique artistic voice to the table. I find it so odd that there are so many distinctive musical artists who are involved in this film. Not just Beyonce and Glover, but Chance the Rapper was also on location for Lion King as well. That's right, he was with the crew in Africa, in VR, and yet the production on each track is almost always bland, dialed down and unambitious. When Elton John was brought on to write the music for Lion King, he was representative in many ways of the music that was popular at the time, gay 90s rock and roll. However, styles have shifted since then, and instead of trying to infuse the music with a more contemporary flavour to make this Lion King stand on its own and be representative for the generation that it's for, instead we get the most minimal and simple renditions we've ever heard, almost as if the songs were an afterthought. I mean, to be honest, I think the most uniquely produced song in this remake is The Lion Sleeps Tonight, and that's not even an original Lion King track. I know it was in the original Lion King, but it's not originally Lion King.
The mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
In the 2019 version, they mix it up. They change the sequence, it's all a cappella, and they show off all sorts of different animal life. It's like for 1 minute, the film comes alive with this energy. And then it's gone. It's just back to a scene for scene recreation of Lion King. That was fun though. I guess I just get wound up, you know, annoyed when the second most successful film of this year does so little to earn that place. The Lion King Broadway musical added new peng-ass songs. It brought its own unique and creative production design to the table that accentuated what it was, a musical. The 2019 film had as many opportunities to bring an adaptation of The Lion King that felt as classy and progressive as the other offshoots in the franchise. It doesn't even really know what it wants to be as an adaptation, and so no feature of the movie becomes memorable or makes an impact. You're just left mildly subdued because there isn't one big problem with this film, it's a whole series of little things that lead to a major problem. Criticizing this movie feels like trying to get at nits that are festering in your head. At first it seems like there's only a couple, but the more you pick, the deeper you go, the more you find. And then you find the eggs. And so what was once a small and simple problem becomes billions and billions of tiny, minuscule nits, all gnawing at your scalp. Without any access to a bath or contemporary knit shampoos, no matter how many you manage to pull out and comb through, there are always more the deeper you go. One knit isn't a problem, but billions, trillions of them, biting and festering on your scalp becomes unbearable. And no matter what you do, how hard you try, there's no escape or redemption or freedom to stop my head from scabbing over horrifically. So, what do I do?
Number 6. What do I do?
I went on national television the week this film came out and begged you, pleaded with you not to go and see it. And everyone all around the world went to the cinema anyway. The film still made billions and billions of money. Moolah, sterling, Hushy station power converters. The film still made more money than all these countries' annual budgets. One film made more money than it cost to run all the government services in Barbados for a year. The original Lion King is special, not just because it's good. This was the B team of Disney animation. No one thought this film was going to do well on release. They could have just half-assed this movie and taken in an easy paycheck, but instead they banded together. They created a unique environment where everyone who had a hand in making the movie was invited to collaborate on its entirety. There was no singular vision, but a team of people all contributing passionately and having the complete freedom to follow their creative instincts. They weren't pandering to any type of fandom. They weren't strategizing about reaching out to the broadest market possible. They were all coming together to make a film which they believed in. And in that vacuum, people managed to create a simple story that deeply resonated with everyone on a worldwide level. That's what makes it special. It's a way of making films which is rarely allowed to flourish, and it's one of the primary reasons it's so precise. Now you might think saying Disney decimated Lion King is a bit harsh, but to decimate literally means to remove 10%. And that's what Disney did. They didn't reconstruct something from the ground up or add any new ideas to the film, they just took out 10%. The facial animations, the music sequences, the characters, the nuts and bolts of this movie. And for the type of film that the original Lion King is, one in which every single frame has been doted over, analysed and cross-referenced, with every plot point considered and developed, removing 10% of that seems like a pretty stupid idea in retrospective. If it's just a light mimicking of Lion King, then what value is it providing that the original doesn't already? So what we end up with is another half-developed, expensive movie that was made on a precise deadline, which meant none of that genuine, spontaneous creativity got to come out in the final product. There are pop stars with tour dates, comedians with TV shows, and a studio that wants to appeal to as many people as possible. This is no longer about winning audiences over by igniting their imagination. It's about making them as comfortable as possible giving over their money. In the 90s, Disney were a company synonymous with childhood whimsy and beautiful filmmaking. But over the past 30 years, they've bought more and more assets as part of their monopolization of Hollywood, and have shown us time and time again that their sole interest is in profits first and artist expression second. The Lion King remake didn't ruin my childhood. It didn't particularly upset me, but what it did do for me was alarmingly display Disney's callousness. It showed their disregard for one of their most celebrated and loved films. It reveals them as cold and calculating, a company no longer interested in taking risks or making films that resonate with children and adults alike. With this Lion King remake, it seems transparent to me that the sole motivation behind making this film was financial and had nothing to do with anything artistically or even morally driven. It's vacuous, and it's a shame that at a time of such divisiveness and greed in our reality, that cinema, instead of offering an escape from my anxieties, simply mirrors it by not having the interest of the audience at its heart anymore. When the original Lion King was released, it became the highest grossing animated film of all time. It acted as this amazing testament for how good animated films could be, and it felt like Lion King really deserved to be at the top of that chart. But now, 3D, Ultra HD, Unity rendered, hyper-realistic, recreated, remade Lion King has taken over as the new highest grossing animated film. I don't think this is filmmaking that should really be rewarded, and it's for that reason that I'm giving this film a 4 out of 10. That's my review done. That's what you all came here for, people.
Have you caught the gunk today? Has the gunk got inside your airwaves? Let the gunk consume you. Let your life be about the gunk, that's what you're here for. Gunky, 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 gunk, it's on my lips. It's in my eyes. I have got the gunk.
He's got the gunk.
Yeah. Got the gunky funk.
He's got the gunk that's funk, and it's in his trunk, and he smokes way too much skunk. He's got the gunk. Woo! Yeah, he's got the gunk. Got the gunk, baby.
Can't go to work today.
Why?
Can't go to school today.
Why not?
Sorry, I can't go out and drink beers with you, baby.
He's got the gunk.
I can't do anything, lie in bed. Cause, babe, I've got the gunk.
Oh, he got the gunk.
Gunky, gunky, gunk.
Sticky fingers.
He's got the gunk.
Sweaty forehead.
He's got the gunk.
Snot in my nose, yeah.
He's got the gunk.
My nipples are hydrated.
He's got the gunk.
They're swelling up so much.
He's got the gunk.
Covered in all the.
He's got the gunk.
All of the gunk. Gunky gunk for life.
Oh.
I'll catch gunk till I die.
Oh.
Just wanna be covered in the gunky gunk, gunk, gunk.
My eyes swell up and my legs go shorter. My eyes
sight is blurred, and my feet are pussy. Oh, I've got the gunk.
He's got the gunk, oh baby.
Oh, I know hunk anymore.
He's got the gunk.
I'm all out of spunk, baby.
Oh, he's full of gunk.
Oh, gunk, yeah, he's got the gunk now. Ooh, yeah, that gunk, making him feel like he's gonna die. Oh, yeah, that gunk. He's got the gunk all up in his trunk, all up in his face. He's such a disgrace, he's lying about all over the place.
Ooh, I'm so gunky. I'm the gunkiest man you ever did see. Covered in gunk from my head to my knees, oh yeah. Nobody can top me off, 'cause I'm filled with tasty, tasty gunk. Crisping up my eyes, maggots in my wounds.
My hair is falling out, yeah.
A rich business owner came to me. He said, boy, that gunk can make us lots of money. Join my train, join my chain restaurant. Selling gunk to babies, selling gunk
baby
to
gunk.
old men.
Oh, the baby gunk will turn your baby into a hunk, yeah.
Chunky, chunky, ooh, chunky baby and gunky. Chunky, chunky, chunky baby and gunky. Other days and other ways. Everybody baby's got his place, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I've got the gunk, but I'm in charge. What would you like? Small, medium, or large? I like the large gunk with the gunk chips. And could I get a gunk shake? Sure thing, man.
Take it to go.
The customer comes first.
Gunky funky, tasty, lovely, little and funky, gunky, yeah.